Well, welcome. And as I said last week, I should now introduce Ajahn Nitho. So this is my Dhamma brother from Perth originally. Like we both kind of grew up as monastics there. As you all know, I started in Myanmar, but anyway, came to Perth later. You were living there at the time. I think you'd already been there for maybe almost 10 years.
No, when you came?
When I came?
No,
not quite. Maybe 5 or 6.
Something.
Yeah. So we didn't really know each other, but when you live around people even for a short time, you're kind of on the same Dhamma path somehow.
Yeah.
And then Ajahn Nitho came back to Norway.
Yep.
About 5 years ago.
Correct.
Shortly after I came back to England, really. And he also had to endure the pandemic kind of here on his own and starting something. So he's starting something in Norway. I go there to teach every year with him. And it will be an inclusive monastery for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. So it's amazing to have a Dhamma brother in Europe doing something similar because, as all of you know, it was quite isolating for me. Still is in many ways, but obviously improving a lot. So we're very lucky to have Ajahn Nitho here. He has a lot of training, especially in meditation and just in the Dhamma over many, many years from a good teacher. So we're both here to share with you today. And I guess we'll have more of a discussion, as I promised last week. So there is a sutta I want to briefly go through. But I want most of the conversation to be around the hindrances and how we work with them. And interestingly, the sutta actually talks about how the hindrances affect our memory. I didn't realize this until I opened the book about half an hour ago or an hour ago. But in this sutta, the similes of the hindrances being like water, metaphors, I guess, are actually in the context of talking about memory. So I think I'll start, and then I guess myself and Ajahn Nitho will bounce off each other a bit and open for your comments and questions. You can put your hand up, we'll unmute you, you can write in the chat, and I'll also include the people here. There's about 6 people here in the room, so I'll include them too, and they can stick their hand up, and we'll come to you in turn. So here we go. So today's sutta is from the Anguttara Nikaya 5s, and it's number 193. Anguttara Nikaya 5, number 193, called Sangharava Sutta. So perhaps I'll just read right through it. It's 2 pages, and then we'll straight away get into some discussion. How does that sound? Is that good? All right. Silence from a Zoom group.
Yep.
All right. Then the Brahmins, Sangharava, approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When they'd concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said to the Blessed One, so that's the Buddha, Master Gautama, why is it that sometimes even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited? Why is it that sometimes even those hymns that have not been recited over a long period recur to the mind, let alone those that have been so recited? So it might not be hymns, but I'm sure you can relate around things that you should really know by now and you've forgotten. Brahmin. So this is why the hymns are not remembered. When one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by sensual lust or sense desire, and one does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen sensual desire, on that occasion one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. Suppose there were a bowl of water mixed with lac, turmeric, blue dye, or crimson dye. If a person with good sight were to examine their own facial reflection in it, they would not know and see it as it really is. In other words, they wouldn't see their reflection clearly. So too, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by sensual desire, On that occasion, one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. And it's the same little sequence for every one of these. So sensual desire is one reason that we can't remember what we've heard, and even the things that we've recited a lot and those that we haven't. Again, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by ill will, the second hindrance, one does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen ill will. On that occasion, one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. And another simile. Suppose there were a bowl of water being heated over a fire, bubbling and boiling. If a person with good sight were to examine their own facial reflection in it, they would not know and see it as it really is. So too, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by ill will, one does not understand one's own good, the good of others, or the good of both, and one does not remember those hymns. So I'm not filling in every dot here, but you get the idea. Again, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by dullness and drowsiness, sometimes translated as sloth and torpor, one does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen dullness and drowsiness. On that occasion, one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. Suppose there were a bowl of water covered over with algae and water plants. If a person with good sight were to examine their own facial reflection in it, they would not know and see it as it really is. So too, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by dullness and drowsiness, one does not remember their own good, understand as it really is the escape, and their own good and the good of others, and they do not remember those hymns. Number 4, again, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by restlessness and remorse, and one does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen restlessness and remorse, on that occasion one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. So the simile here. Suppose there were a bowl of water stirred by the wind, rippling, swirling, churned into wavelets. If a person with good sight were to examine their own facial reflection in it, they would not know and see it as it really is. So too, etc., etc. In other words, they do not know their own good or the escape from that restlessness or those hymns. And lastly, number 5 hindrance. When one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by doubt, and one does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen doubt. On that occasion, one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. Suppose there were a bowl of water that is cloudy, turbid, and muddy, placed in the dark. If a person with good sight were to examine their own facial reflection in it, they would not know and see it as it really is. So too, when one dwells with a mind obsessed and oppressed by doubt and does not understand as it really is the escape from arisen doubt, on that occasion one does not know and see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. Then even those hymns that have been recited over a long period do not recur to the mind, let alone those that have not been so recited. So I'll end here. We have 5 similes that describe our state of mind with the metaphor of water that's either colored or boiling or what was the other one? Covered with algae or whipped up or muddy and turbid and placed in the dark. I forgot that aspect. So it's not only that it's muddy, it's even in the dark when you're full of doubt. And these are the 5 similes. But the other part of this is that it's talking about some of the downfalls of these hindrances. So the first problem that's being addressed here is that one does not understand the escape from that hindrance if one's mind is oppressed and obsessed by it. So that's quite an extreme case of a hindrance obsessing the mind, oppressing the mind, and one simply cannot see the escape from that hindrance at that time. The other thing is one doesn't see again. So understanding is obscured here, as it really is one's own good, the good of others, and the good of both. So it actually affects one's ethical behavior. And then the last one is about memory. So we don't remember things, even if we've recited them again and again and again. And some of us have recited suttas or tried to learn chanting and struggled to do so. But this could be applied to anything in your life that you just forget. You forget about the meeting, you forget about what a friend said to you, or the 1000th person that you've met, you can't remember their life story. That's what happens to me. So don't you remember that like 20 years ago I used to work at such a... Oh, sorry, I don't remember. So I find this quite interesting that it talks about these aspects of the hindrances, and I wondered if we could discuss that a little bit today. And you made a very nice point earlier about how this could have been relevant in the Buddha's day in regards to the importance of actually memorizing teachings.
Yeah, that was something I just figured out, or it might be the case, because these are actually the same hindrances which apply to our meditation. So at the time of the Buddha, a lot of people had to recite and learn all those teachings by heart. And basically, the Buddha is teaching the 5 hindrances, which normally is taught for the meditation, also for the process of learning all the teachings. So by learning, applying those hindrances to their learning of scriptures and texts, they also learn how to meditate at the same time. So it's a smart combination.
Yeah. And the importance in those days of having to remember the teachings in order to preserve them as well.
Yeah.
You know, because there was no kind of recorders that you can press a button. There was no Zoom or cameras or anything like that.
No books and no internet.
Nothing written down.
They actually had to learn everything by heart.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would love to hear from you about your experiences with this and whether you've noticed a relationship between hindrances and memory, or hindrances, of course, and not understanding what's really in your best interest. Or the first one was the hindrances and not being able to understand how to come out of them, getting really bogged down in them. And it's really interesting. We've got an Agoka Upachala in the corner, so I'll come to you. But I find it really interesting to sort of maybe explore as well whether it's always due to the hindrances that we forget, or that our memory is not good, or maybe it's not entirely due to that. So anyway, yes, would you like to?
Yeah, I only just thought of this, but it's like,
can you hear that volume? No.
No.
Do you want to come up? Actually, would you mind
being on screen?
Yeah, would you mind? Yeah. Hello.
It seems like when the mind is hindered, we can even forget to meditate. Like I'm thinking back to about 5 years ago when I was meditating and I was really exhausted, and I was like, it's like all the hindrances are here at once, and it just felt like I'm sitting here, but what am I doing? That kind of feeling of like, so sati being a kind of memory, like mindfulness or memory, remembering, that kind of seemed to just link for me. Anyway, maybe if one or both of you could touch on that.
Do you want to speak to that at all?
No, but I have another comment I might actually like to say, because we just came back from Norway and teaching a 7 days retreat there. And there was one person on that retreat who said something really interesting in an interview. It was one of them working as a psychologist, and in psychology they're really trying to teach people being aware of the mind, mindfulness. And they're also trying to motivate people to be in the present moment and let go of all kind of heavy emotions. And she told me that she's been teaching this and helping people to do this for many, many years. But she herself, she has not been able to do it, to be able to see it and then actually let go of a thought or emotion. But being on that retreat for 7 days, after 5 or 6 days, when you live in a restrained kind of setting, you're basically reducing the hindrances, those 5 hindrances. And because of that, her mind was kind of clearing up. So there's more clarity in her mind. And she said that for the first time in her life, because all those hindrances has been reduced, for the first time she was able to see what was going on in her mind. And for the first time she was able to see it and let it go. But like before, in her normal life, there's so much activity, there's so much traveling, there's so much stress, so much responsibility, that the mind is just flooded with all those hindrances. But as soon as you get to work on those hindrances, your mind clear up. And that's when you can really look at the mind and you're able to let go of things and be able to live more in the present moment. So one thing is just saying that we have to live in the present moment and we have to be kind, etc. But we have those hindrances in us. And those hindrances are actually blockages for our own development.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the definitions of the hindrances are those obscurations of the mind that what is it? Weaken wisdom and nourish delusion. I really like this.
You don't see it
clearly. We don't see.
You don't see what's happening in your mind. There's too much. And I think Ajahn Chah, he had this idea of if you're out in the forest in autumn and all the leaves have fallen down. So there's like thousands, hundreds and thousands of leaves on the floor. And there's too much. But if you are on maybe on a beach, like a white beach, and there's one leaf lying on the ground, and you can see it. You can pick it up and like, what's this? And like, nah, let it go. If you're just drowning with impressions and sensory desires and ill will, it's just boiling on. It's so difficult to be there and to learn and to develop.
Yeah, it's true. And I suppose that's the problem in this sutta, is that we're talking about when the mind's obsessed and oppressed. So it's already quite intense, to the point that you don't even remember things that you knew very well before. So you're literally just unable to see clearly. And it just reminded me of that comment during our retreat when somebody said they had all the hindrances at once. It's like, if you had all the hindrances at once with these similes, you'd have this boiling water that's bright red or bright yellow, which is in a dark room, which is choppy. And, the whole thing is just, you don't even recognize it as water, right? The whole mind is just, really churned up. But I think just to go back to what Ajahn Nitho mentioned, about even forgetting to meditate because you don't see your own good. That's also the advantage of a retreat.
Yes.
The retreat situation carries you. You don't have to remember to meditate because, and the same with the schedule, right? You usually remember to come here. Retreat. That was during a retreat. So the hindrances can really take us to some strange places. Shall we come to Corinne, who also has her hand up, and then we come to the chat? Hi.
Hello. It's such a multifaceted topic. So I just want to pick out a couple of things. Blockage. I was thinking of that. And when Anagarika Upachala was speaking, what came to my mind are very natural life situations that we can all face, which can present as a blockage. Grief, for example. I had it recently, a very strong grief experience, and I could see myself actually clinging to it as a form of identity. I'm the one who has lost, and I could not connect to meditation. I could not connect to listening to Dharma talks. Everything, nothing went through. But what helped was just the trust that letting go is possible. And it almost felt like I have to trust that over time this will melt.
Yeah.
It will melt if I don't reinforce it. If I can just sort of gently, perhaps with some compassion for myself, almost like soothing, gently, like a baby, just soothing, and just have a very simple daily activity, not overcommit, just keep things simple. It was almost like I could sort of find a bit of a equilibrium again, and it's almost like this muddy water was cleaning itself up. It was just happening.
Yeah. It reminds me of that simile of those kind of little snow thingies, like there's some water in a kind of plastic thing, and a little scene on the bottom, and then there's these like this snow, and you shake it,
Yes,
and the snow is kind of everywhere. You don't see, and then you just leave it, and all the snow falls to the bottom. It's the same with mud, isn't it? If you put mud in a glass or something, or I don't know. Sometimes if you've got juice or something and you shake it, it's cloudy, but if you just wait, it kind of separates and the heavy part goes to the bottom. So I think that's a really good point. If you just sometimes leave it alone, and in a way that is the letting go, like the letting it be. And the letting it be with the gentleness, with the trust, is in a sense the three right intentions working in harmony, working together. I think of letting be as renouncing. I listened to a talk recently by Ajahn Nitho, and he's like, you're not renouncing the objects. You're renouncing that part that's struggling with the objects, whether that be grief or depression or excitement or anything. You're renouncing the wrong relationship with those things. You're not renouncing those things themselves. And it's when you find those right attitudes, you renounce the struggle, that things just naturally settle down. So you can call it letting go, but I think it's just, you haven't done it. You've just not continued to stir it up.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. And the faith and the trust. That's why the Buddha says patience, is the highest spiritual practice, which leads on to the question in the chat, actually. You asked last week if we find similes helpful, Ven Candā. As a visual thinker, I find the similes very helpful, using visual language, visualizations, and metaphor. Doubt as a desert really is a clear perception that matches the felt experience. The idea of being in a strange land full of danger is excellent, and faith is a beautiful antidote. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Because if that strange land is our mind, doubt often comes up when we move into areas of our minds that are strange to us, that we don't yet know. So we're lost at the time. But if we just have the faith that, okay, for me, it helps to know that someone else has been here before. Even if I haven't, someone else has, and if I've read the teachings and I've read about what the Buddha experienced, I know, oh, okay. So I have sort of a map, and I can start to kind of navigate the terrain through what other people have said. One of the amazing things in Burma with my teacher there was that I'd tell him what was happening in my meditation, and he'd sit down. I wouldn't think I had a question. And he'd look at me and he'd just start to say, yes, yes, and this is happening too, and this is happening too. And next, number one, you always say, number tick. Because tick, nick, Tom Lang Na, I think, Burmese. Number tick. This will happen next, and this will happen, and then you'll face this hindrance, and then you'll overcome it in this way. And he'd go through it, and I just think, wow, this is so amazing. It just completely validated the experience as being impersonal, actually, and part of a process that someone else knew so well. It was absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to say anything else about faith?
I just want to mention one thing when it comes to doubt. The thing is that we, when we practice and we have doubt, that means that we just ask all these questions. We end up, is this the right thing, or is this the wrong thing? Should we do it this way or that way? And it basically just that doubt stops our practice. That's the problem. Instead of doing something which might work or might not work, we just don't do it. And that's the biggest problem with doubt. Our mind is actually creating a hindrance. So instead of doing something or trying something, we don't do anything. And of course, then there's no development. So doubt is actually quite, it's a powerful hindrance.
Yeah, that reminds me of the talk I gave on Monday for Oxford Insight, which anyway, we haven't put out there yet. But I was thinking, how do you help people to develop confidence? And the first thing that came to my mind was just take a step. Just take a step. That's it. Don't let the doubt. Just do something, like trial and error. It's a way of learning, right? You try something that doesn't work. It gives you a clue. Okay, try something a bit different, or try something similar, but not quite the same. But just try something, and then you learn from a process of cause and effect.
Just don't stop. Just do something.
Just do something. I'm coming to Shelley, then I'll come to Gloria, and then to Diana. So, Shelley.
Yes, I really want to thank you, Venerable, for last week's session, because I think I mentioned I was going through a lot of agitation at that time. And I've been sort of contemplating really how one meets the your attitude to the hindrance. And, I noticed the tendency, I'll do this to get rid of it. I think I find this with the antidotes. I find myself feeling a wee bit suspicious of them, because I'll put this antidote in so I can get rid of this, because I don't want to have this hindrance. I'm a sort of bad Buddhist because I've got this hindrance. All this sort of stuff going on. So I was really using a lot of investigation. What's this all about? And then suddenly it just occurred to me, this agitation, all it is an unpleasant feeling, and I don't like it, and I want it to go away. And when I could take that step back and just look at it, it was still there. And I thought, okay, it's a hindrance. I'm imperfect. That's there. That's a reaction. It's actually just a painful feeling. And I think what's lovely about this sutta, it talks about when you're sort of oppressed and, I can't remember the other word. What was it? Obsessed. Oppressed and obsessed. But because I wasn't actually oppressed or obsessed by it, because I was sort of investigating it, if I'd sort of actually identified with it and really got sort of into it, I didn't let it go. I just sort of let it be, and it will go in its own time, and not do anything to sort of make it go away. I think one has to be careful not to act out of these hindrances. I suppose this is why they're so dangerous. So that's how I've been practicing, and I found that useful. And it's just all about it's because somebody said we take it as ours, as our thing, and it isn't. It's just stuff arising and ceasing, really. I don't know whether that can just be a bit lazy. I also like to contemplate the other thing I like to do is to contemplate the enlightenment factors. And if you can just only have mindfulness and investigation of dhammas when the hindrances arise, it does really weaken them, I find. So that's something I do, because they're always available. You can't always have piti or tranquility or samadhi or all the other nice ones, but you can mindfulness and investigation are always available. But we forget. This is what we forget. When we're obsessed, this is what we forget. That we can be mindful, and we can just see them as impermanent, or all applied all the Buddha's wonderful teachings to them. So that's what I've been contemplating, and I just wanted to thank you so much, because your questions last week. Your answers to my question last week was really sort of helpful and affirming, and yeah, it was, but it was just sort of saying, oh, it's just an unpleasant feeling. It was good, and that sort of, and for a minute, and then it comes back. But yeah, I'll stop now.
Great. You want to say anything?
No. I just want to say that I really totally agree. Just because things changes all the time. So if there is a hindrance now, at one point it will somehow disappear by itself.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Super. Yeah, and I just want to add that the mindfulness and investigation probably is the best of those enlightenment factors for actually overcoming the arisen hindrances, because at that time you don't have it. I mean, the hindrances can take your energy away. You don't have PT, that's the whole problem. But if you use the first two, and then the hindrance starts to decrease, that's what gives rise then to the energy and to the PT, etc., etc. Yeah. And even it was arising for you in the sense that you stood back, you weren't so sucked in, and you realize it's not actually that bad. It's just an unpleasant feeling. I love that when we just say, oh, it's just Vedana, it's just unpleasant feeling. So what? Big deal, you know. It's the I don't want it that's the main problem, I think, sometimes. Yeah. Someone in the chat says sometimes a change of environment can really help clear the mind, which is another valid point. The Buddha said, you know, if you notice that you're in a place that is basically encouraging the unwholesome qualities to increase, not in 1 day or 2 days, but over time, then try to change your environment, especially if it's leading to a decline in the spiritual qualities. And if an environment is leading to the wholesome states arising, again, over time, because it might be very difficult for years, but generally you see some good qualities developing, then stay. They even say in one sutta, even if the teacher like throws you away, you just don't stay. You just don't leave, even if they throw you out. So this is, we talked about that at tea time. I kind of did that with Ajahn Brahm. It's like, I'm still going to keep calm. I don't care if I'm the wrong gender or what.
Yeah.
I'm still going to calm. So yeah. All right, Gloria, do you want to ask something to Ajahn Nitho? Oh yeah, you're coming to the screen. Awesome. Come. That's lovely. You don't mind being on here?
Yeah.
Lovely.
So I just want to say, like, for doubts, I found yesterday I found that like I have a lot of doubt in my practice. And because of the general like lack of confidence issue of myself, like I would just want to make sure I do the right thing all the time. But yesterday I found like one of my thing that worked for me is like walking meditation, because I found that when I'm in a lot of doubt, that I just walk, and then my mind will keep telling me that this is not working, you just stop, you're not going to get enlightened, nothing will work, like stop practicing, everything will come up in my mind. And I would just keep walking, just keep walking, just don't stop, just don't stop. And then I found like the longer the duration I walk, the feeling that the doubt is overcoming me will like generally start to diminish, and then I will be like, I feel like at the end, although I may still have the thought, but I was not affected by them so much. But like sitting meditation is not work that well for me in this aspect, because when I sit with a lot of doubts, they tend to get stronger and stronger. I don't know why, but like walking meditation just work for me.
That's brilliant. That's really great advice, because maybe it's that idea that you are physically keeping going. When you sit, you can get obsessed in your head, but here you're literally continuing to take the steps.
I think that takes into account.
Wow, brilliant. You want to say something about that?
No, I think that's a brilliant way of of not stopping.
Yeah.
You get the momentums going, and then it's like you get the energy coming, because walking meditation tends to have more energy, and then the more you walk, the more energy you have, and the energy arise, and because the doubt sometimes is like, I feel like it's like when you're tired and when you're lack of energy and tends to be more stronger, and then when you're walking and then you're walking, with some mantra maybe, and then I tend to feel like the energy is coming up, and then the doubt will not affect me that much. So
yeah. Interesting that you connected it to energy, because we were just saying that mindfulness and investigation, the first two of the enlightenment factors, maybe are really good for overcoming hindrances, but that's an example of how energy can come in even while the hindrances are there. You just keep the energy, you just keep it going, even if it's physical, but it leads to mental. That's really great. Come to Diana next.
Thank you, Ven Candā.
Hi.
Thanks for the group. Yeah, I was just wondering if when he says one does not understand the escape from the arisen hindrance, by escape, is it the antidote or the enlightenment factor that's used to counter each specific, or is the escape more like the fourfold path, the eightfold path, or the Four Noble Truths? Like, what's meant exactly by escape?
Yeah.
That's this question.
Okay, I can try to give an answer. I think that the purpose of these, the reason why the Buddha was teaching these hindrances is that he wanted us to deepen our meditation and get as deep as possible, because it's our mind after deep meditation which can create the arising of really wisdom, deep wisdom. So I think the escape the Buddha was talking about is it's stopping us from deepening and uplifting our mind. I think that's the main purpose of those hindrances.
Yeah. Right. You mean so that understanding the escape means actually one does not understand what it's like at the other side?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So we don't understand that there's actually even a way out of it.
Right.
And then because of that, we don't know or see as it really is one's own good, the good of others, or the good of both. So Venerable Chanda described that as we lose our sila. And its
effect on our conduct.
And it's because of that we can't recall the hymns. That's how it's set up in the structure of the, when those things happen, then we can't recall the hymn. Like, in other words, it's all founded on sila.
I think you also can say. I think you also can say that when the hindrances are dominating the mind, our minds is not that strong, and our abilities is reduced, including our ability to remember things. Just even remember that part of this training, when you the later part maybe of our training, is that we are supposed to even remember our past lives, and to be able to remember something so far away, so much back in time, you really have to empower our mind to remember those things. And that is something you do after meditation. And the more the hindrances is reduced, the deeper we can go in meditation, the more we empower our mind, and the stronger abilities our mind have, both to develop wisdom and to remember things. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's great, because that comes back to the aspect of mindfulness, which is remembering.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, Diana, in the Goenka tradition, that Goenka, she says the meaning of sati, it's actually from smriti in Sanskrit, which means to remember. And then he was saying that that's not at all what it means in Buddhism. Sati means present moment awareness. But actually, that's not the case, because in the suttas, it does say that part of mindfulness is to recollect things that happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
And this would seem to say the same. So I think it's not necessarily that it follows on, but I think it's all part of the consequences of having these hindrances, that we don't know what our own good is. It's like the wisdom faculty is diminished. And when that's diminished, we can't remember things. It's like we're just not clear enough even to remember ordinary things that we've remembered previously. So we actually don't only not remember, we even forget what we already understood, in a sense, right? So it's pointing out the danger in these hindrances. But can I just say also that I think the escape could, I mean, I think it probably does mean actually one does not understand the escape means doesn't understand what it's like to be free from these things.
Yeah.
But it also could be that we actually don't see a way out of them either. Like we don't understand how to emerge from them. So in that sense, yes, it is always the Eightfold Noble Path. Reflections, I think someone said above on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, there can be antidotes to each hindrance. But again, as we've been saying, it's difficult to always apply them without trying to get rid of. That's kind of counterproductive, but just to actually understand their opposites. So with restlessness, we might wish to just develop the perception of contentment, or with ill will, the perception of love and kindness. I think this is also part of the way to escape. Maybe not the actual escape. I have a question here, and then I'll come to you. Do you want to read this one? We're coming to Kathleen because we'll come to people who haven't asked yet.
Okay. When I was ill for an extended period earlier this year, I found myself often not wanting this and getting very impatient, so not wanting to be sick. Someone referring to patience as constancy is a switch I want to try next time. Impatience arises, linked to the metta for myself and other in a similar condition. So I found myself often not wanting this and getting very impatient. Someone referring to patience as constancy is a switch.
Staying with something. I think they mean as an aspect of patience. They could see constancy as an aspect of patience.
Yeah, just having constancy in practice at least, just continue doing it.
Right.
Or maybe not, I don't know.
Do you want to clarify? Yeah, we'll come to you. You can explain.
Yeah, thank you. The aspect of constancy which I found so helpful was that with patience, there's this sense that one thinks, if as soon as this is over, everything will be fine, or I want this to be over. You know, if I'm patient enough, I'll soon be rid of it.
Right.
And there's a hidden catch in there. So this is why I liked translating patience as consciousness, or thinking of it more as not conscious, constancy, as remaining constant, remaining steady and constant, rather than having this almost forward-looking, future-looking thing of, if I'm patient enough, something will change, which of course it will in any case. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Staying with something.
Staying with, and accepting that it is, and as soon as I can accept it is as it is, without thinking, then it'll go. It's so subtle sometimes.
Yes, isn't it?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. That in one sense, patience can then end up being some kind of spiritual bypassing. While if you just end up just staying with it instead of have a constant focus on what you're doing, you're not running away from things. You're staying with it. You're trying to learn and go into it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It reminds me of a talk Ajahn Brahm gave years ago, 2004. I know it. 2014, Kanti, Waiting in the Moment. And it was so great. I remember getting full PT listening to that talk. It was about two types of patience. One is waiting for something to happen, which is not actually real patience. And one is waiting in the moment. So waiting in the future for something to happen, or waiting in the moment. And then he took it even further and said waiting on the moment, like waiting on it, like tending to it, being with it, giving it love. And that's just brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, that really helps me a lot. I'm going to keep coming to the new questions. So Casey had a question here.
It's actually not a question, but I had a comment. I don't need to.
No.
I'm happy here. About Diana's thought about finding the escape and a lived experience around that, because I think part of what I found is about not finding the escape is because of the delusion element of the hindrances feeding into not seeing things as they are. You don't think there is an escape. You're not looking for the escape. So, for example, I have had tendency towards a lot of ill will towards the world, of feeling like, oh, like the world is full of suffering, and actually ill will towards suffering itself, and it's a terrible place, and there's no happiness to be found, and there's no hope. And when you think that way, that it makes you think that you're seeing things as they are when you're not really, but then you're not looking for an escape because you sincerely believe that's how things are. And so the escape, it kind of creates inaction, because of this sense that you don't need to find an escape from anything, because you think you're seeing clearly, but actually the water is boiling. You can't see you can't see clearly. And so I think it, like, the defeat of hope that there is an escape is part of the reason that it can be hard to find an escape from the hindrances, in my experience of that.
So in a way you can interpret one does not understand as it really is the escape means you don't even think there is one, because, well, I suppose you don't think there's anything to escape from, because you actually think that this is right and justified. How many times have we been angry and we've just thought we're completely right about this, you know? Okay, maybe I shouldn't be angry, but it's very justified. Or you live with a sort of subtle ill will all your life and you never really realized it until one day you practice lots of metta. It's like, wow, is this how people always are? Like, wow.
And I think that is so important. Why we run, people can really practice and go on retreats and have a lot of freedom from hindrances, so they get their own experiences, and then they can see, okay, so there is an escape. Your mind can actually be free, relatively. It can. There is happiness, and as soon as you see that and you know it yourself, then you have more like an active relation to your mind. Okay, so at that retreat, I was actually really happy. I felt really great. Why am I now not feeling that way? Maybe I'm stressed, maybe I'm suffering. And then you have this, I don't know, you have this motivation, and you know there is a way out of it.
Yes, it's like you have something to compare it to. So there's a sort of relativity there, or objectivity, I suppose. And then we forget again, and we forget that once upon a time we were feeling more peaceful than this. You sort of lose track of it, right? If you're out of retreat, or if you're just in a really difficult situation full of hindrances, it becomes normal again. And but then still you remember, I guess that's again why it's important. Finally, you may remember that, oh, hang on, there was a time that I actually experienced that freedom from ill will. And in a way, that's why Ajahn Brahm often says, reflect on those times, right? Remember those times that are peaceful, that you're content, that bring it up in your mind, so that you keep that memory alive, and then your mind learns and remembers how to go back to it again. And I think for me also, like when you're in this kind of spiritual life full time for many years, you kind of see so many people trying to take shortcuts and sort of thinking that, hey, we even heard today about a very senior monk who's reputed to be, I don't know, enlightened or something by people who shouldn't say such things, talking about the fourth jhana as a little bit of a fuzzy feeling, or like some piti arising. And it's like it's so much more than that. Like that's disappeared a long time before. And I think it's this, how was I relating this? Just this desire to kind of be further on than you are, that doesn't enable you to see kind of the possibility for a much deeper freedom. We have to really remember that there's something much deeper and keep that in mind. I think we have to assume that, that whatever we're experiencing now is not the reality. Like there's something much more profound than this. That really helps me, especially when I have a tendency to kind of think I know what's going on, or a tendency to judge, or think that I can get there through thought, that actually I'm not seeing as it is. Especially if we see a person and we think we kind of get them, it's like you can be absolutely certain that it's biased. Just to learn to doubt our thoughts. I don't know if I'm making sense. All right, we have another question. What does the hindrance of ill will mean? Is it not wanting something, or is it more intense than that?
I think that basically craving and ill will is just the same, but the two sides of a coin. Because if you want something, really want it, and the more you want it and you don't get it, you get ill will. So if there's something you want a little bit and then suddenly you don't get it, then you get a little bit of ill will. But if it's something you really, really, really want, and you're putting a lot of effort, and it's really important for you, and then you don't get it, then you get a lot of ill will. So those two are really, really connected.
Yeah, and it can get really intense. Like if you don't get something you want and you really, really wanted it, that's why people kind of then fight, right? Say if somebody falls in love with the same person and then two people fight over that person. I mean, I think this is common, isn't it? That violence happens, you know, in the bar or whatever. And then, of course, you know, you don't get enough power, you don't get enough, I don't know, land, and you fight with the people that are different from you living on that land. You want it all to yourself. So then you go to war, you know, so it's a whole spectrum. And I think, yeah, it is just another kind of wanting, but it's wanting something not to be there. Yeah. So it's a kind of aversive reaction when you don't get what you want, or just an aversive reaction to the feelings that are there. But it can be incredibly intense, and it can be also very subtle in our meditation, that we're just kind of fed up with it. We're just kind of bored. It's not really interesting. Yeah. Our mind just sort of slips off the object because it's just not grabbing our attention. Yeah. That's a kind of ill will as well. It's just nothing. We just don't really value something. It's like, ugh, the breath. Been with the breath so many times, this is going nowhere, just bored. That's also a kind of ill will. Yeah. And you might only notice that one when you actually try to practice a little loving kindness and you realize, oh, actually, there is a way to be really content with the breath and to really enjoy the breath. Yeah. So I think there's a whole range. Anything else from anyone who hasn't spoken yet, or I'll come back to a question in the chat. All right. So could you speak about the recollection of the Buddha and the Arahats as antidotes to the 5 hindrances? I associate it with sympathetic joy. That's a nice association. I learned that if I perceive others becoming calm, bright and clear, I can trick the mind to experience those same feelings in one's own mind by imagining, giving or rejoicing in that resilience, freedom from woe, fear, grief, harm to others, like an upward spiral or well-being cascade. Does that resonate with your experience of appreciative joy and compassion meditation? Let's just stop at appreciative joy because it's a little complex beyond there for me. Does that resonate with your own experience of appreciative joy? Let me stay on the appreciative joy here. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that? Or
let's see, what was...
So speaking about the recollections of the Buddha and the Arahats, recollecting the qualities of the Buddha and the Arahats is associated with them with sympathetic joy, I guess, because you're recollecting the Buddha and the Arahats and their qualities and feeling so happy for their freedom and the contentment. So then by thinking of that, it's almost like your mind starts resonating with those same qualities, right?
Yeah, at least what I can say that I have this my own word for this. Those kind of recollection is what I call for inspirational meditation, and that, like Buddha-nusati and Dhamma-nusati and Sangha-nusati and all those recollections you can do, they might be, or they are uplifting for the mind. And when your mind is uplifted, hindrances are reduced. So of course they work, whether it's appreciating joy or it's metta, or it's some kind of recollection. It all works, reducing the hindrances. Absolutely.
Yeah. However, I would add that like nothing ever just always works in the same way.
No.
Like, so yes, all those meditations have that same effect, but they won't, it's not like, oh, now I found this thing, it's going to work every time, because I think we have to like be willing to experiment every time also. Like sometimes one thing that worked just won't work next time you might find that you do need to practice compassion instead, or maybe just resting the mind. You know, sometimes I'm kind of very eager to practice metta or to, practice breath meditation. And then I realized, actually, I just need to rest my mind, first of all. I just really need to go back to the beginning, let the mind be, settle in the present moment and just do nothing. And sometimes the whole meditation passes by that way. And then I find I'm really quite peaceful, and the mind restores its energy. It didn't need to do something else. Didn't really need to think about those qualities, but sometimes those qualities arise by themselves. So yeah, I think there's a time for active meditation, inspirational meditation. Actually, there's a sutta in the Hindrances. Is it the soil remover? Where they say that sometimes you sprinkle water, sometimes you just let the fire burn. And sometimes it's like basically there's three qualities when you're developing samadhi. So one is the samadhi, the calming the mind. One is like pagaha, which is like inspiring the mind.
Yeah.
And one is upekkha, equanimity, which is just looking on. So there are these three aspects involved in melting the gold, melting the mind, making the mind soft. The samadhi, the quietening, the sprinkling the water, which is like inspiring.
Yeah.
And then the looking on, which Ajahn Brahm calls watching the trees grow.
Yeah.
Just doing nothing, basically, letting those trees grow in their own time. You're not going to see it growing. Trees grow slowly, but just trust that you're doing enough by just watching.
Yeah.
The things that have already been planted and that are growing already.
So sometimes you put in effort and you really try to calm down, and sometimes you do something to inspire yourself and uplift yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just let things be.
Yeah.
And just relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just take a rest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, here I guess we do all that, like especially Gloria's doing all of that, sitting sometimes, hopefully lying down sometimes, and doing lots and lots of walking as well. So walking also can be quite uplifting for the mind, I think. Yeah. So do what works, but there's no set formula, that works for everyone all the time.
Yeah.
So we do have 5 more minutes. I don't know if anyone here wants to add anything. I don't know if anything about memory or anything about anything.
Maybe quite random.
Yeah, please. So this is a random question. Would you like to?
No.
Okay.
I used to be dyslexic as a kid.
Yeah.
So I couldn't remember how to spell, but I didn't have any problem with memorizing other things. So the lack of memory is pretty specific. Will that also be because of hindrances in a very specific way?
Okay. So the question was about dyslexia and that the person. Did you hear it? Okay. Yeah. So that they couldn't spell. They say they couldn't remember how to spell, but they could remember lots of other things. Maybe they had a very good, literary memory or just memory for, things you learned. Is that connected to the hindrances? And I would probably say no, if it's something that's a kind of neural wiring. I think it's a kind of neurodiversity. And I think there are types of lack of memory, let's say, or lack of consistency with our memory that are not related to the hindrances. And I think that's a really important point. There is such a thing as neurodivergence or diversity. Yeah. And things like ADHD and dyslexia would not necessarily be that much connected to memory. They'd be more connected to some different, I don't know, because I'm not a physician or anything, but I think some different wiring in the brain, different neural networks that can be actually altered through medication sometimes. But I don't know about dyslexia. I think it's something you just work with, right? Live with. And it's just a particular way that you work. It's not, I don't think it's at all related actually to the hindrances. And I think there's a real clear difference here. So the hindrances are things that cause suffering. We can feel them arising and causing suffering. We can feel them reducing our energy, reducing our peace. They're emotional qualities in a way. They're like afflictive emotions. It's very, very different from different capacities, different mental capacities. Yeah. So I think we have to be really clear on that for ourselves. And I think sometimes when people do have a diagnosis of something like ADHD, it can be a real relief because then they feel like, okay, so it's not that I'm just not reliable or that I don't care about my friends or that I don't care about their birthdays or whatever. It's just that my brain works differently and I need different prompts to remember these things. I need to organize my life a bit differently, make reminders or have everything in one place or whatever it is, and have friends around me that just understand where I'm coming from, you know, not necessarily in the same way as others, but have different ways to show how I care, or different ways to express my intelligence, different strengths that I can cultivate and develop. So I do think that's different. Yeah. Anyone else with that sort of experience? Karen has another question or comment. I'll just come to you and then maybe we'll start to close.
Just briefly, if I may, what I've noticed at times, I've become unusually forgetful, which is not me, and it's not because I think there's too much going on or overloaded, but I just wonder, can it happen? I've been trying to focus on the sense doors, you know, and guard them, that I'm actually guarding myself so much that I'm sort of, I don't know, dulling the mind, but almost like becoming, I don't want to say numb, but almost like I'm not really present. I'm actually not mindful. I'm just sort of, I'm there, but I'm not switched on, if you see what I'm saying. Can that happen?
I think that depends on the way that you're practicing that. For me, guarding the senses does not mean cutting them off or protecting them. That's not what it means. I think what it means is like noticing if something is coming in and causing hindrances to arise and addressing it right there. So it should have the opposite effect, I would say. If you're really guarding the senses, it means you're kind of noticing how hindrances or unwholesome qualities arise in relation to the objects of the senses. So in other words, the relationship between you and the objects of the senses, there's a gap there, and it's there that you put the mindfulness. It's not that you close them off.
Okay, I think what I might be doing is actually cutting the contact.
Yes, I think it might be. There's a really nice sutta. It's the last in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 152, I think. And it's called Indriya Bhavana, or something like that. Indriya Sambhavana, something like that. Yeah. And it actually says, one ascetic comes to the Buddha and says something like, oh, I can guard the senses, I can practice sense restraint, I don't look, you know, I don't hear anything. And the Buddha says, you stupid man. I mean, I'm not saying this to you, that's not. But the Buddha was sometimes very, you know, very kind of abrupt. And he said, then in that case, a blind person would have perfect cultivation of the senses. They would have developed their senses, you know. So I like that sutta because it doesn't even use the word restraint or protection. It actually uses development of the senses. And it's about being able to be in the world of the senses without allowing the senses to give rise to, or allowing your reaction to the objects to give rise to greed, hate, and delusion. But it's okay what you're doing as well, because there are times to quieten the senses. And I did give a talk, a day retreat on this a while ago about quietening and guarding the senses, or gardening if you want. Gardening the senses. And I think it's slightly different. Quieting the senses is more appropriate in a retreat setting, I would say, but also to stop you becoming overstimulated. And sometimes it's necessary. Like I do that when I'm through the airport and you have to walk through these disgusting perfume shops. Actually, the worst one I ever went through was in Norway. When we left Norway, I was with Matthias and Minori. It was awful, wasn't it? It was like so strong. We had a cup of tea like quite a ways away opposite, and it was giving us headaches. It was so strong. So yeah, at that point it became guarding the senses and guarding the reactions, right? And trying to like zone it out. But in the beginning I just wanted to like cut it off. I'll just read one more comment and then we'll move to closing. After getting COVID, I noticed memory getting much worse as my practice had been improving. I wonder how bad memory would have got if I didn't have the practice background helping it along. Yeah, we were saying that earlier, that somebody can have dementia, right? And it doesn't mean that an enlightened person won't get it, but good practice might be a preventative, right? It might stop it progressing as fast, it might ward it off, but it won't actually stop things which are diseases of the body or the brain, right? So there's a difference between the mind and the body, the mind and the memory, the mind and the brain. There's a difference there. But certainly if we have hindrances and a lot of negativity, a lot of stress, etc., that's going to further tire the body and the brain and be unhealthy for our general system. So yeah, good. It's a good reflection, and someone else has a similar experience as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, I guess we'll invite Minori to say a few words to end. And then I'll tell you about the upcoming events.
Yeah, so thank you very much, both Venerable Chanda and Ajahn Nitho, and for your teachings today. And Ajahn Nitho, after traveling, I think this morning, and joining us and continuing that hindrances that we learned in the retreat as well. It is very inspiring. So now I'd like to say a few words about the beautiful enabling quality of generosity. The giving goes against a stream of wanting and collecting, and it develops wholesome qualities that form the foundation of our Dhamma practice. So it is not only giving, and we can improve our Dhamma practice as well. So the Buddha said that the wisest way of giving is when one gives with the heart full of joy for the purpose of beautifying the mind, for equipping the mind for the practice of serenity and insight. It's taken from Anguttara 8.33. So generosity can be a practice of checking in deeply with us. Like, what would it be like to give for the benefit of all without expecting anything in return? So here at Anukampa, we offer several ways that we all can cultivate this beautiful quality of giving. There is one-time donation of any amount. You can get that link right at the chat. Thank you, Matthias. And once you go there, you can do a bank transfer, a PayPal, a sum up. And always you can do a regular donation through your bank institution. You can do a standing order. And I want to stress that any amount, so any amount is not too small for a donation. And if you're not financially able, or if you want to do an additional generosity, you can offer your time as a drop-in, or you can be a volunteer. There are different volunteers that we need. So if you contact team at anukampa.org, which is in the chat, anukampaproject.org, thank you. So you can offer your expertise and discuss your time, and you can go forward from there. And you can provide meals to the monastics, either in person, or you can do a cook delivery. You can send groceries, household items. There is a needed items list in the website as well. So you're always invited to join. There are sometimes half-day retreats, and then whenever they are scheduled, there is full-day retreats. Then there are special events. There's retreats. You can see them on the website. You can see them on the Facebook, and you can get them from the newsletter if you have subscribed it. And then there's usual regular things like the Sutta session. There's metta chanting on Wednesdays. And then there is silent meditations on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And there are many one-off events as well. Also, the main events now are Ajahn Brahm's June events. There's a retreat and the talks as well. And then there is another event coming, Ajahn Brahm's, in November. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was so thorough. Wow. It sounds like we're doing a lot of stuff, which is true. So, yeah, I do hope to see many of you soon, especially when Ajahn Brahm's here. And what else have I got left to say? I'm not really sure. But yeah, while he is here, there's a special opportunity to contribute any groceries because he has completely different food tastes from us, like condensed milk and mushy peas and Jackie potatoes and baked beans. And so we're compiling a list, and it's going to be all his favourite childhood food. So if you'd like to be in touch with fish and chips in Brighton, keep that one. Well, yeah. So so if you'd like to be involved in that in particular, please write into the team. Good. So thank you all very much. We can unmute you and you can wave goodbye. I think tomorrow morning we do have a metta meditation, and then in the afternoon we'll see some of you here for the half day gathering. Diana says no accounting for taste. That's right. Yes. What do they say? You can be enlightened in mind and not very enlightened in taste. I don't know, I made that up. Of course, he says the opposite. He says, my taste is so enlightened. But whatever. Good. All right. So bye. You can wave goodbye. You can say goodbye.